Hello and welcome to another Standard Games video on the official MTG Arena channel. Today we're taking a look at a red-green or Gruul aggro deck with a bit of a legendary sub-theme, and one of the new additions from Wilds of Eldraine is Ruby Daring Tracker at 2 mana, a 1/2 with haste, and says whenever Ruby attacks, if we control a creature with power 4 or greater, Ruby gets +2/+2 until end of turn, so it can attack as a 3/4, which isn't too bad, and Ruby can also tap to add a red or green, so we can immediately tap it for mana the turn we play it, thanks to haste, enabling us to play another 1-drop, like maybe a Phoenix Chick, Kumano, or even a Monstrous Rage, and then we can also potentially set up a turn 3 4-drop like the Partners, which can be quite nice, especially the sequence of turn 2 Ruby, use the mana to play Kumano, and then on the second chapter we'll get an extra +1 counters. Partners enter as a 3/4 and can now distribute 3 +1/+1 counters, so that's one of the best sequences that our deck is capable of. And then looking at some other cards from Wilds of Eldraine, at 1 mana, Monstrous Rage, an instant, giving +2/+0 until end of turn, as well as creating a monster roll attached to that creature, giving it +1/+1 and trample. Now a creature can only have a 1 roll attached to it at the same time, so drawing multiple copies of Monstrous Rage can be a little bit awkward if we only have the 1 creature out, but this has been an amazing addition for a lot of aggressive decks, and especially red-green, where some of our creatures might get chump blocked. It's nice to be able to trample over. And then we've got plenty of haste creatures as well in this deck as an aggressive strategy that makes sense, and it also synergizes with Samut. This 3 mana 2/3 has First Strike, Vigilance, and Haste, and whenever a creature we control deals combat damage to a player, if that creature entered the battlefield this turn, we draw a card. So great synergy with haste creatures, also very synergistic alongside Kumano, because by turn 3 it will be transformed into Etching of Kumano, so if we attack and connect with both of our creatures, we get to draw 2 cards, which is great. Then we also have 2 copies of Goddric, a 3/3 with haste, and if we enable Celebration, meaning 2 or more non-land permanents entered the battlefield under our control this turn, Goddric turns into a 4/4 flying dragon that also has fire breathing, so we can pay a red mana to increase its power, and we've got plenty of ways to enable Celebration on Goddric, Kumano being one of them. If it transforms, it counts as 1 permanent entering. Then we also have Squee making several goblin tokens, so that can easily enable Goddric by himself. And then we also have the ability of just playing lots of cheap spells thanks to Ruby. Cards like Phoenix Chick as a 1 mana 1/1 flying haste can also help enable Celebration for us. And even if the monster roll from Monstrous Rage counts as a non-land permanent entering, so that can also enable it. And that also gives us a nice flying creature to maybe close out games where the board is somewhat stalled. And then our main removal spell in this deck is not a burn spell, unlike most red aggro decks, but instead 4 copies of Animist's Might, and this pairs quite well with our small legendary sub-theme as a removal spell that gets a 2 mana discount if we target a legendary creature with it, and then that creature deals damage equal to twice its power to target creature or planeswalker we don't control. So this can be a very efficient removal spell, potentially even taking out some larger creatures like Shieldred, which can be a problem for other red decks. And then the legendary theme also allows us to play 4 copies of Plaza of Heroes in the mana base, which can kind of fix our mana as a nice dual land that doesn't cost us any life, unlike our Kerplusen Forest. And then in the late game we can also use it to maybe protect some of our key creatures, such as the Partners, which can grow our team with additional +1/+1 counters. As we mentioned, quite nice alongside the Kumano, giving it an extra counter. Also very good alongside Monstrous Rage. We can essentially give it 3 extra power for 1 turn, and then still keep the monster roll for future turns, giving us a lot of extra +1 counters during that turn as well. And then at 2 mana, we've got 2 copies of Felden as another hasty creature, can potentially draw us extra cards if it's dealt damage. And then the Iconoclast is also quite flexible, can play it as a 2 mana 3/2 Trampler, or we can kick it for an extra red, in which case it will enter with +1/+1 and haste until end of turn. So then it's also a 4-powered creature to enable Ruby to get the extra +2/+2 bonus. And then we've got 3 Bodyguards, a 3/3 that can be sacrificed to give our legendary creatures 1 extra power and indestructible until end of turn. Now most sweepers in Standard nowadays exile cards like Sunfall, so Bodyguard's not super useful there, but still a nice way to potentially soak up a spot removal spell that would be going after our Partners instead, and then the extra power can also be relevant if we're attacking into larger creatures. And then at 3 mana, 2 copies of Migloz, just a very large creature, great at blocking red decks, and then can also use the various abilities, maybe blowing up artifacts or enchantments, or attacking with Menace and Vigilance, can also give it +2/+2, and that pretty much sums up our entire deck. Phoenix Chick is here as a 1-drop we can play to apply a bit of early pressure, also very synergistic with Samut if we draw it later in the game to immediately draw an extra card, and then in some late games we can also get it back from the graveyard, especially if we start going wide with Goblin tokens from Squee. It becomes easier to enable Phoenix Chick to come back from the graveyard, and then it can also maybe pick up the Monster Roll token from Monstrous Rage if the board is stalled, so we can still fly over and deal some damage. And then our mana base, as we mentioned, 4 copies of Plaza. The Copperline Gorge makes sense in an aggressive red deck. Also part of the reason why a red-green aggro deck can be successful in Standard is having an untapped dual land. And then a Carplusan Forest, a bit of a necessary evil. It is quite painful when facing other aggro decks, but it is another untapped dual land, and that's important if we want to curve out smoothly. And that's why we only have the 2 copies of Rockfall Veil, which will enter tapped in the first couple turns. And then the channel lands are also quite relevant. Boseiju to deal with artifacts, enchantments, maybe some creature lands, and then a Crucible making 2 hasty 1/1s can also help close out the game or give us some chum blockers at instant speed. So we do have 2 of them. It is legendary, can't have both in play at the same time, but we can usually find a way to channel it on the cheap since it will get a discount from controlling legendaries as well. So yeah, that's our deck. Now let's jump into some games and see how the deck does. Okay, we're on the draw with a fine hand. Turn 1, probably Kumano. Turn 2, I'm thinking Bodyguard. Turn 3, Kicked Iconoclast. And then if we find Samut along the way, that could also be quite nice with Kumano up against mono red aggro. Okay, so 4/4 Bodyguard is an excellent blocker early on. So this should be a decent hand for the matchup. Now Ruby's also an interesting twist, but I'm still liking 4/4 Bodyguard. Ruby would still die to a Lightning Strike. Opponent's got a turn 2 Felden. And then Squee could also be a solid play next turn. So we've got options. If our opponent attacks, could imply Monstrous Rage. Or maybe a Witchstalker Frenzy here. Yep, that's a good one. So that was a very nice answer to the Bodyguard. Now, could play Goddric, which would have Celebration enabled, but can't really afford to attack, I don't think. So could instead just attack with Squee and then leave Etching back on defense. Could go Ruby plus Iconoclast as well. And then we'll have a 3/2 back. Goddric on defense is also an option. Can block Felden pretty well. I think I'm still liking Squee, just attack with Squee and then Etching trade for Felden. And hope they can't enable Prowess, forcing them to leave Swiftspear back. Right, they've got Goddric, so Swiftspears are hanging back. And then I could trade, take 3, which is probably necessary. But now they're likely to find spells to enable Swiftspear. Just a bunch of creatures. Squee also good with their Goddric, of course. And a land. Okay, so what options do we have? Probably just gotta hang back. Goddric's gonna fly over for 4. We can block Squee. And then, yeah, I guess go Ruby plus Goddric. Go and play Squee. So we'll be at 3. I guess 2 with Goddric pumping. So we're dead to any burn spell, which is not a great place to be. Now if I kick Iconoclast, we also pump Ruby. Could play Phoenix Chick to trigger Goddric, but we're still not attacking for close to a lethal. At least our opponent's not close to getting Squee back, but there is a Mishra's Foundry we have to worry about. So they can attack us with 4 creatures next turn. We can let one Swiftspear through, assuming no prowess. And then most non-prowess cards would also be haste creatures, so just gotta hope they have a bunch of lands. Which is unlikely, but play kicked Iconoclast. Phoenix Chick. And then I'm gonna try and set up lethal over the course of 2 turns. Phoenix Chick, of course, can block, so that's attacking. And then, let's say we send Goddric and Ruby. Then Iconoclast can trade for Goddric on defense. We hit the opponent for 7, 8 down to 8. And then with another kicked Iconoclast we can maybe cross the finish line. We'll have 3 blockers back, so we're not dead on board. I guess there was no real reason to kick Iconoclast in this case, since Goddric already enabled Ruby for us. Could have left myself with 1 mana untapped. Alright, let's see if we're dead. Opponent attacks all out. Well, we don't really have much of a choice. Okay, trades happen. And a second main Goddric makes sense as another card they could have had in hand. Monstrous Rage, an awesome top deck. So that might do it here. Kick Iconoclast. And then Monstrous Rage enables Celebration on Goddric. So, yeah, can attack all out. And then I guess Squee also does it here. Opponent can block and will still trample over. I guess there's no reason to do anything if we already have lethal in case they have another Witchstalker Frenzy. And that does it. Awesome. So after a great start from the mono red deck with that early Frenzy, we still got there in the end. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the play with what looks like a keepable hand. Kumano sets up turn 2 3/3 Felden. Then we've got Iconoclast with Kicker. Flexibility here is quite nice. And then Partners on 4. So we've got a very nice curve out draw. Can even channel Crucible at some point to make some hasty 1/1s. Opponent likely holding up Go for the Throat, which is probably going to kill Iconoclast now. That's okay. Just got to keep up the pressure. And then we'll still get in for 5. Opponent actually choosing to kill Felden. So takes 1 extra damage that way, but denies a legendary creature that could maybe draw us an extra card later. Okay, Glissa's pretty good. Currently don't have a way to attack past it. We'll play Partners. And growing. Let's go with Etching. And pass a turn. Liliana makes me sacrifice Iconoclast.
I've always hated crowds.
Monstrous Rage is actually pretty good, so now Partners can get past the 3/3 thanks to Plaza. So that's the plan here. Now I could also Monstrous Rage before attacking. That way we get to grow Etching quite a bit more. But opponent doesn't know about Monstrous Rage, and I kind of want him to block with Glissa. So we'll try it this way. Opponent's just gonna let Liliana go, fair enough. In that case, we can still channel Crucible, make some 1/1s in case of another Liliana. Now Glissa can also destroy enchantments if it connects. So I would probably have to chump it with a 1/1 token so it doesn't destroy my Etching. So yeah, Glissa definitely adds an interesting twist to this game. Tortoise is next. Does not mill a land. And Glissa attacks, so we'll chump it. And then we get to attack back with our squad. So let's say I Monstrous Rage partners now, get it up to 5 power, grow the token, then we should have lethal. So yeah, Crucible coming in clutch. And there we have it. Sweet, on to the next one. Okay, we're on the play, and our hand is sadly a one-lander, so I don't think we can keep. This is better. 1 Felden can go, and then we've got 2-drop into 3-drop, and then Iconoclast can also be kicked against a white aggro. Okay, so finding some of our removal spells is going to be key in this matchup. A card like the Partners can also help us go over the top if there's a bit of a board stall. Looks like blue-white soldiers. Turn to Harbin. Okay, Goddric is nice, but for now I'm liking Squee. Opponent's likely gonna just eat the 1/1 token, and then next turn we can enable Celebration on Goddric. Thanks to the token from Squee. And if I played Goddric now, our opponent might have traded for Harbin, which is probably something we want to avoid. Now, a Brutal Cathar would be pretty effective, so hopefully they don't have it. Opponent attacks for 5. And passes, so this might be a channeled Eiganjo, or reinforcements making 2 1/1s. I think I still like playing Goddric, and then we can also sink 1 mana into the ability if it survives. I guess it could be another Sorting City, but most soldier decks only play the 1, or opponents playing a build with counter spells. But probably just the reinforcements. Or a Bodyguard, I guess a new addition here from Wilds of Eldraine. Doesn't have the best of blocks, so exiles Goddric, and then they can eat a 1/1, fair enough. Still pretty effective. Next turn we can kick Iconoclast, but it's not clear that we're actually winning the race. Bodyguard, not a soldier, just a knight. We fall to 6, so we'll have to leave something back. Can play Ruby and then still kick Iconoclast. Ruby would also be attacking for 3 thanks to the 4-powered Iconoclast. So we are threatening a lethal, so they would have to chump Ruby and then take, let's see, 4, 8, 9 down to 1. So yeah, they can chump Ruby and survive. And then on the way back they would have us. So I can't attack all out. So in that case, probably just keep Ruby back. And then what happens? Opponent can still attack all out. And then pump Harbin, that hits for 4. And it's not like our creatures are very good on defense. So I think we still send Felden and Squee. And then play Ruby and Iconoclast. Can block, and still probably die. Opponent's got the Make disappear. So now if they get back the unearthed creature, they should have us. Goes for Siege Veteran instead. Still does it if they put counter on Harbin. Well, that doesn't kill us, because now we can block Officer, take 5. So our opponent somehow found a way not to win the game. But that's why we play. Now they still get a 1/1 token. Goddric. Yeah, that might actually do it now. So play Goddric, and then I won't be able to tap Karplusan Forest for mana. But it will enable Celebration thanks to Squee. So I can hit for 5 in the air, and then get 2 damage in with our ground creatures. So wow. Thought we were dead for sure. If our opponent unearths Frontliner there, we die. If they put Counter on Harbin, we die. But sometimes you just gotta play to your outs and hope the opponent makes a mistake. Sweet, on to the next one. Okay, we're on the play with a fine hand. Turn 2, I'm thinking Bodyguard. Turn 3, Samut. Upside of Ruby is having extra mana, but I probably want to play Samut as soon as possible, and then saving our haste creatures until after we have Samut in play. Can also draw us extra cards. And against red aggro, we can also use the Bodyguard to protect Samut from something like Lightning Strike. So this seems fine for now. Could see a 2-drop with haste hitting us for 3, and I'll just take it. Keep Bodyguard to protect Samut. And then we could have a nice efficient turn with Animist's Might as our removal spell here. Our opponent with a Veteran. Okay, so that could block Bodyguard, but does not block Samut particularly well. So we'll just get in with the Vizier. And then next turn we can look into Felden and Ruby. Opponent actually with a Monstrous Rage on defense. So now what I can do is sack Bodyguard, increase Samut's power by 1, and then we'll still be able to kill Veteran. Alright, that's a fine exchange, although now they could have another burn spell to finish off Samut, of course. If the attack with Etching might imply another Monstrous Rage, so then I'll probably take it. It's going to be an Invasion of Tarkir. Does our opponent have a dragon to finish off Samut? They do. Shivan Devastator revealed. Okay, so now we could actually be in trouble. Invasion has 3 defense counters left, and Thundermaw is no joke. So what's next? Can play a Ruby, Felden, and then still Animist's Might. Although I might want to keep this to answer Devastator, although that's just going to immediately transform Invasion of Tarkir if our opponent has an extra land, that is. Or if we're unable to block Etching of Kumano as well. So maybe we keep Animist's Might to actually kill the Defined Thundermaw instead. And then for now I can go Ruby plus Squee, which puts the most on the board. Since we're not that great at blocking Etching of Kumano, Etching can also exile Squee if it dies. So yeah, this Invasion dealing 3 as opposed to 2, making a pretty big difference. Opponent's got the Devastator. But we've got Animist's Might plus a few legendary creatures to make sure we kill Thundermaw. And there's another one. Okay, so take out Thundermaw. And then Felden could Might the Devastator as well, and it's probably worth 1 damage, so Ruby gets to attack, since we seem to be ahead in the race. And our opponent explodes, so yeah, that's the power of Animist's Might, a 1-mana removal spell against these other aggro decks. Sweet. Get to rank up. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the draw with what looks like a keepable hand. Ruby could set up a turn 3 partners, but we'll wait and see if we want to play Bodyguard first. If we draw land, it could also change our decision. Because if we don't draw land, then protecting Ruby with Bodyguard becomes more important to ensure that we can get to 4 mana in a timely fashion. It also depends what our opponent's playing, if they're capable of easily killing a 1/2 creature. And then the turn we play Ruby, we could also play 1 mana Might to potentially take out an opposing creature. So then we might need a larger Bodyguard in play already. Turn 1 Epicure, so a red aggro it seems. And we can go with tapped Veil, so I don't have to take damage of Karplusan Forest. Alright, red-white tokens perhaps. It's gonna be a Charming Scoundrel. Goes for a Wicked roll. Could also be kind of a celebration deck where Epicure and Scoundrel both enable celebration at once. So yeah, go for Bodyguard. Blocks pretty well here on this board. And then next turn we can go Ruby plus Animist's Might at the very least. And if our opponent attacks, Monstrous Rage would be the main concern. I think I still block Scoundrel, not too sad if Bodyguard dies. And there it is. So they only get to keep one of the two rolls. But of course a Wicked roll falls off, dealing 1 damage in the process. And then still take 1 trample. Okay, can play Ruby. I don't think we want to Might the Epicure necessarily. So I might as well attack for 1. Don't mind trading 1 damage for 1 damage, even though I guess our opponent could have the reinforcements to double block Ruby. That would be bad for me. Alright, I'll hang back. And there it is. Okay, so we can maybe block the 1/1s here. Unless our opponent's got a Recruiter to pump them up, and there it is. So +1/+0 and haste to their team. Okay, so I guess we'll just take it. We're gonna be pretty low, but then next turn we can go Partners plus Animist's Might and try and stabilize. So let's try that. And then take out the Recruiter. And pump up Ruby. Next turn we can play Phoenix Chick and cheaply channel Crucible, which will help us block the opposing 1/1s. Another Recruiter. Well, that's probably game over now. Can block it, still take 6. Alright, GG's. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the play. Our hand seems keepable. Turn 1, Phoenix Chick. Turn 2, Felden. Turn 3, kick Iconoclast, so we've got a decent curve. And then if there's ever a blocker we need to attack past, we've got a Monstrous Rage. Opponent with turn 1 Eiganjo. Okay, so Felden it is. Opponent seems to be holding priority with 1 mana. Could be like the White March. If they pitch a card, could see them exile Felden. Yep. And they got rid of a Wedding Announcement, so still a good tempo play from the opponent. Being on the draw, having a 1 mana answer is nice. And now a farmhand to get a Plains. Partners was a great pickup, so we can play that next turn and keep up the pressure. And with Partners it's always good to have multiple creatures in case they kill one of them. At least we'll have some place to put the +1 counters. Opponent passes with 3 mana up. That's interesting. Could be another March, I suppose. Or a Soul Partition, so that's going to cost us 6 mana. Probably not going to happen. But we've got another one we can cast for 4. Archangel Elspeth, kind of a must answer, as it can make life-linking tokens. Okay, so yeah, if we go with Partners, one thing we could do is Monstrous Rage Partners itself. So it goes up to 5 power, giving us 5 +1 counters. And then Phoenix Chick can finish off Elspeth, while Iconoclast goes face, or we can just keep it back on defense. Not hating that idea. And then Partners will permanently get that monster roll. I guess putting the counters on Iconoclast makes more sense if we don't want to trade for the 2/1/1s, and then Phoenix Chick can go face while Iconoclast finishes off Elspeth. And that's enough for a concession. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the draw with what looks like a keepable hand. Veil does enter tapped on turn 1, but it does allow me to go turn 2 Ruby plus play Phoenix Chick. And now I could also play Mountain plus Phoenix Chick, setting up Ruby plus maybe Monstrous Rage. Seems good. And then Migloss is going to be excellent against Mono Red as a 4/4 creature that's not that easy to get rid of. Another Ruby, so if the first one dies, it's not a disaster. Let's just send Phoenix Chick, keep up Monstrous Rage, to maybe protect from a 2 damage burn spell. It's gonna be a Goddric next. Opponent sends both, so I could use Monstrous Rage to essentially eat the Monastery Swiss Spear. Would just be a trade for Goddric, which is also reasonable, just trade off Ruby for Goddric. Next turn play Migloss, and then we don't have to worry about this getting flying later. Or we can eat the Swiss Spear, have a Ruby that can then also attack with the bonus from having a 4-powered creature. That might be better. Okay, jam Migloss and attack. Next turn we're looking at a kicked Iconoclast. Could also activate Migloss to get +2/+2. Although more likely to go for Vigilance and Menace, so we can also attack with a Ruby. The ability can also be used to destroy an opposing monster roll token, which is an enchantment. But our opponent actually has the Witchstalker Frenzy to clear our 4/4. At least it's used up their entire turn. So now Iconoclast with Kicker would also pump up a Ruby, so I think I prefer that over Iconoclast and then Felden, which is another option. Just go kicked Iconoclast and smash. Opponent at 4, and then we've got some more haste creatures ready to attack. So yeah, they had the answer to Migloss, but it still cost them a turn. We'll see if they can stabilize. They still have a lot of cards in hand. If those include some cheaper burn spells, they could potentially stabilize. It's going to be a Squee, not the best on defense. But yeah, opponent can't really attack all out. Opponent passes. Kumano is 1 more damage, so our opponent should be dead if we play Kumano, play Felden, and attack all out. Alright, sweet, on to the next one. Okay, we're on the draw with a fine hand. Turn 1 Phoenix Chick, turn 2 I've got a few options. Now I'm liking Ruby plus another Phoenix Chick, and then a turn 3 Migloss will also pump Ruby, or we could go for kicked Iconoclast, which will do the same. Facing black-green, so Golgari mid-range. So yeah, having lots of cheap spells here to get on the board quickly can be important. Opponent deciding to draw with the Dread Knight, that's brave. So yeah, go for Ruby plus another Chick. So we are pretty well protected against an opposing Liliana, making us sack a creature. If our opponent's got a 3/3 Trespasser, Migloss still allows Ruby to attack, and there's Liliana. So I can just sack a Phoenix Chick, finish off Liliana by just attacking for 1, and then still hit the opponent for 3. Partners will also be a great follow-up. Could also go for Iconoclast, which will achieve pretty much the same, but let's go with Migloss and then keep the haste creature as a surprise. This also gives us another tool to maybe attack past Shieldred. And if they main phase try and kill Migloz, Partners is more likely to stick around. It's going to be double Virtue. Okay, that does gain them 4 life. So maybe explains why they were comfortable using the Adventure on Dread Knight. But now Partners is going to be the follow-up. Unless we want a double spell, but it would be without Kicker. So Partners it is. Counters on, I want to say Ruby, so it survives another Virtue. Could also go Phoenix Chick and have a larger evasive attacker, which also makes sense. And if they had Virtue, they would probably kill Partners anyway. Tortoise is next. That's fine. Finds a Mishra's Foundry. So we could play Squee, pump it with Partners, so we have a 4-power creature that can attack alongside Ruby. Phoenix Chick would be an attack for 10. Opponent gets to block the 1/1 token if they'd like. That's certainly a decent option here. And then next turn, try and close out the game with Iconoclast. And then if they kill the legendary Squee, we've got a backup, so we don't really mind. Partners is gonna hang back, because if they block Partners, they would only take 11. Doesn't seem worth it. I guess I hadn't considered the Phoenix Chick in the graveyard coming back, so that could have been a reason to do something else, but yeah, I guess not attack with the Ruby and instead get back Phoenix Chick. Still kind of like the attack for 3. And then next turn we could maybe look into getting back Phoenix Chick. Definitely a nice combo alongside Squee, helping us go wide. Opponent's actually jumping. Falls to 6. So Gix's command would be the main concern now. Just a Graveyard Trespasser that can exile Phoenix Chick. Goes for Migloz, so maybe a small oversight. And opponent is at 7, so I imagine they're dead. If I play Kicked Iconoclast, attack all out, or getting back Phoenix Chick at this point is good too. Could also play Felden and get back Phoenix Chick so Ruby can attack. We've got options. And then we'll pump the flyer. And our opponent explodes. Awesome. Okay, so we got to see our Gruul aggro deck in action. Over a sample size of about 30 games, I'm sitting around a 70% win rate, which is pretty good for best of 1. The advantage of playing this over mono red is that our deck is slightly bigger, so our creatures can outsize the creatures from mono red while still being a pretty fast deck against other mid-range strategies. And then we also have some decent tools to go over the top of other mid-range decks, unlike mono red, which is mostly relying on burn spells to win the game. Now, of course, the disadvantage of red-green over mono-red is if we were facing something like blue-white control, which has plenty of answers to creatures in the form of removal spells and board wipes, then once the opponent stabilizes by killing off all our creatures, it's going to be much harder for Gruul to close out the game, since we need to get a creature in play and be able to connect with the opponent, whereas mono-red can potentially steal a game by just finding a few burn spells. So definitely has a few drawbacks compared to mono-red, but for the most part I think I've been happy with the added color, just giving us that tiny bit of extra power. So that's going to do it for today's gameplay. Want to thank you for watching, hope you enjoyed, and as always, have a nice day.